Some introduction. My name is Tom O'Mara. I've been with the association this fall will be 5 years. The prior 15 years I spent with the Iowa Insurance Division. Most recent position there was Assistant Commissioner under Nick Gerhardt. Prior to my time at the division, I was a claims adjuster for a local company and spent 7 years adjusting pretty much all types of claims. So about 25 years in this insurance world we're in, and I obviously enjoy it because it's been my life for a while. So again, thank you for having us.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Madsen with Madsen Insurance. We have locations in Marshalltown, Newton, Prairie City, Colfax, and Jewell here in Iowa. I actually grew up in Cedar Falls, and my dad, Bill, was actually a mutual secretary with Danish Mutual Insurance in Cedar Falls. I have a business administration degree from Cameron University, excuse me, and I've been in Marshalltown for about 32 years now. So thanks for having us today, and we look forward to it.
Right. And, when Brian asked us to talk about communications today between basically agents and companies, it got me to think, and it's a year ago, it's really been a really easy conversation because things had been the same for forever and ever. But now we kind of have to break this into three parts. Communications pre-COVID, communications during COVID, which we still are in, and then what's it going to look like post-COVID. I think some of the changes that have been made during the COVID time may be sticking around for, till the end. It's hard to tell. I think companies are looking at it and saying, boy, we're saving a lot of money on this travel stuff, and we're able to hold these Zoom meetings as in today, and they seem to work. So it's time will tell. I certainly do hope that it doesn't come to that. I think in our world of the insurance industry, interpersonal communication, you can't beat it. I think it's necessary. I think that our customers expect it. I think our agents expect it. And it's just such a vital tool in what we do. So hopefully we'll get back to whatever we can for as far as normal goes.
Yeah, and I definitely agree, Tom. Pre-COVID, we're used to seeing even stopping in at the mutuals or our companies. We're used to seeing field reps, the claim reps stop in and are seeing our customers. The underwriters, even management is out and about, and we're able to communicate with them. I think our agency is just like everybody else's. You want to build a relationship and get to know the people that you're working with, and during COVID, that has been made very hard with people not traveling, people not wanting to go out, maybe not having some company sponsored education or other things that you do for your agents. So it's definitely been a different time, and from our standpoint, we're just now maybe starting to see a few companies start to send some people out and see some things.
Right. And same holds true from the association side of it. I'm sure many of you have maybe been in our building, and we have a beautiful ed center right here that seats 90 to 100 people, where we're used to having education classes. And it's been over a year since we've had one in there now, and I don't know when that's going to change. Hopefully soon. But the communication part of those classes is so vital, because I think the agents who come in learn as much talking to one another on breaks and lunch and whatnot, talking to their peers in the industry and talking about a claim situation or accounts or whatnot. And it's, obviously we all do the webinars, and we all appreciate the convenience of them. But, the in-person thing in our association world, and Brian, you can attest, is really been missed throughout the year. We've canceled our annual convention last year. We've canceled our rural agents. We had a Zoom one. We canceled annual planning meetings. So cancel. And trying to stay out in front of the agents has been a challenge. I think we've done a fairly decent job of it in the manner in which we have in front of us today. But Steve, yeah, if you want to just touch base a little bit more on the agent company communications, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. And I want to commend, all of our companies have done an awesome job. We went from within a few weeks, a lot of places were not letting employees in their buildings. They were having to work from home. I think all of our companies did outstanding jobs of getting people set up in their homes and getting people to work, whether you did that at home or in your building from the mutual side. I thought the initial keeping business going was an awesome thing. From our side, we're seeing a few things with companies that are still having employees work from home in regards to real experienced individuals and maybe newer individuals where when they were all in their home office, they had people next to them that could help them and work them through problems. Maybe taking just a little bit longer to work through those issues because they're having to email and use phones. So in some instances, we're seeing just a little bit longer time periods to fix those things. Audits and claims, with our derecho on top of COVID in the last year, some of our companies tried to do everything with our insureds or us helping them. And we definitely worked through challenges and getting photos and getting estimates and doing things like that. So those are all things that we've had to work through. We miss in person, and I surveyed a few, about 5 or 6 different agents before we came on today. And I think, whether you're young or old, I think we're hearing a lot of those same concerns. Not having, company sponsored functions for education, not having those types of things, no visits, everything being done with Zoom. As you guys know, it's just not as fun or as easy to do it through this mechanism. So,
and I say that as far as our association, nearly all of our agencies are back open in a manner of doors open, if you will, staff in them. But the companies are not. I mean, you all, deal with the same thing, I'm sure, and I'm not sure about all the mutuals if they've come back into to open yet or not. But the companies around here, they're pretty much still remote, and it poses a challenge because our agents, enjoy in visiting with the company reps when they come by, and they get a lot out of it, and they have questions for them, and they expect answers. And to Steve's point, it's just not the same when you're trying to email people back and forth, and the underwriting is difficult to connect with. And it's not the company's, not the employee's fault, because they're the directive of their companies. They're doing what they're told to do. They're staying home. I'm sure most of them would rather be out. I really do. I've talked to a lot of them, and I think that they're eager and ready to start going now, but they don't really have the option at the moment. Communication in the derecho did prove to be a problem. You know, there were a few companies, and I won't name them, but who chose not to come out and adjust claims. And who do they put it on to do that but the agents? And they'd tell the agent to go out and take pictures, diagrams, measure, and send it all in. Well, the agents were calling me saying, "Wait a minute, Tom, that's their job. You know, that's what they're supposed to do, not us. They're telling us to do all this, get estimates and do this." So there was a little bit of friction there, if you will, with some of that during the derecho. And I don't know if you can blame that all on COVID or the fact that there were so many claims. Companies weren't ready for it any more than we were. And they didn't know what to do. I mean, they had more claims than they've ever had historically at one time in the state. Their staffs were spread out all over. They weren't in the office because they're COVID. It proved challenging. I think things got worked out to the most part. Consumers were frustrated because they turned a claim in and they wanted their adjuster there and they wanted payment for their claim, and it didn't work that way on this. So it's just, if there's ever good timing for derecho, I don't think so, but this was particularly bad timing because of the fact that it was right in the middle of the virus, and people were not in the offices and teams weren't readily available and whatnot. So the communication on that end just proved to be an extra challenge. Again, I think we all worked through it. I personally, I think the association here has great communication with the companies. They can pick up the phone and call me. I can pick up the phone and call them. And we generally get things resolved, to both parties' liking on issues. But yeah, the communication has certainly been challenging during COVID. Not to say it wasn't challenging sometimes before. I think we all saw some changes happening before COVID was even in existence. Staffs changed, methods of communication changed. Some companies chose not to even have field reps anymore. So it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And Brian, I think you would agree. Our communication from the association side, having the events that we have had, whether it's our rural agents or our young agents, or whether it's our normal convention, whether it's doing Insurance Day on the Hill, all of our company partners are part of those events, just like you guys do the same thing. And again, losing those in-person events and going back to virtual events, Tom and our staff has done an outstanding job of turning those things around, just like you guys are doing this Zoom meeting, to find ways to connect with your members. But it's still more fun in person. Whether we ever totally get back to that, with the cost savings from both the association side and the company side, is yet to tell in the future. But I think our carriers, I think our association is trying to find ways to continue to communicate with its members. Is it the same? I'm not sure it's ever going to be the same, guys. But you have to continue to find ways to do that.
Right. And, Steve mentioned Insurance Day on the Hill, and historically you guys have always been very active in that day. And I got a photo this year. It was pretty much canceled. We handed out mugs and did our little bit of propaganda deal, but I got a photo this year, the day of Insurance Day on the Hill. And it was one person sitting at a table in the rotunda with all these mugs on his desk. And he was an intern from one of the companies who was just sitting there by himself, nobody around. So it was just a strange thing to see, because that's always such a busy day for you guys all and us as well. up at the Capitol. So it's, yeah, it's the communication aspect of that is different, you know, not only connecting with our company partners, but, you know, our legislators. I mean, there are bills out there right now that would affect all of you, all of us. And Mike St. Clair does an excellent job up there on your behalves. And I work with Mike on a regular basis. I think we're doing good, but you know, they don't want to be in front of us either. You know, they tell us to email them or call them. But as far as what we used to do, put our note in and say we want to see Senator so-and-so, and then they'd come out and get us. It doesn't happen now. So that has certainly been a communication challenge up there for all agents around, because it's some of the adverse bills, I'll call them, that I think would affect both organizations. It's almost like they're trying to sneak them through this year, because it's a good year for them to not have a lot of opposition or a lot of voices up there speaking against these bills. But we're staying on them. They're not getting us. So.
Yeah. Just looking through a few notes here, Tom. Visiting with a few agents just to get some opinions on how things were going. You know, again, I think everybody's ready to get back to some face-to-face meetings. I do think some of our membership is worried long-term about how things are going to go forward, whether companies are going to be back in their home offices or whether they're going to work remotely and do some of those things. The cost savings is yet to be found. There's definitely with their company people not out, they're saving money, and I think the people that I spoke with are really in favor of seeing that come back. With hopefully with the expansion and the people getting vaccinated, we'll be able to get back to some of that. I think our communication, I don't think Zoom meetings like this are going to go away. And I definitely think there's some things that we can do better this way. I think the people that I talk to on the claim side, with all the activity that has to take place on the claims and some of the claims we had through the derecho, we need that adjuster. We need that person-to-person communication so they can work through those issues that made it a lot more difficult over the phone where they weren't face-to-face. And I believe you get some of that when you're face-to-face. You get the emotion and you get the things that have to happen, and it helps get to the resolve the matter, in my opinion.
Right. And you know, I learned something that I never even anticipated throughout this whole thing. And I mean, agents, associations, whatnot. What we do is we're somewhat at the mercy of companies. And I never thought I'd be saying that, but you know, I found myself checking with them to see if they would be able to send people to our convention, to our rural agents, to do the booths that they have. You know, if you've ever been to ours, there's 40 some representatives up there, 50 some who have a booth at our annual convention. Or you know, at our rural agents, they have hospitality suites around the rotunda at the Holiday Inn, and it's been historically done that way for years. So I surveyed the companies and I called them and I said, you know, would you guys consider doing that this year in a different format? They said no. They said, we just can't do it. We're not having people back in the office yet, and we're not going to start sending people to these events until things are much quieter than they are now. And it just made me scratch my head a little bit, saying, geez, I mean, we really rely on companies sometimes more than I think. in the association end of it too, though. But they've been great. Again, they've talked to me. They've tried to work with me on certain things. They're willing to help. It's just challenging. They don't know the answers any more than you or I, and they don't pretend to. And I can't guarantee things. I can't guarantee that people wouldn't get sick at one of these events and spread it through other employees. It's not my position to do. So it proved to be quite challenging in communicating with companies to beg them, if you will, to participate in our events. And they clearly aren't ready yet. So what kinds of questions do you all have regarding communication or anything for that matter? I would be happy to answer any particular questions that you have. It's kind of a broad, hey, Randy.
I've got one. Hi, Tom. Hi, Steve. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah.
Just on communication, is there across the board of the top carriers in an agency or that are your go-to carriers, could you list off, let's say, with top 3 characteristics that might be a common denominator and why you would turn to that carrier?
Well, on the top tier, they're all a little bit different in a sense that they do things differently. Common denominators, they all want to hear from us. They don't always like to hear what we have to say, and they're not necessarily going to change what we want to have changed, but they're willing to listen, Randy, and that's important. And just to have the door open, if they're in that top group of companies, they certainly know what agents need, what we want, and they're willing to listen to us. And I think that's vital. Just the communication is open. It's not the case all the time. Sometimes they just, turn their head and turn their ear and don't want to hear what we have to say. But I think for the most part, the top tier, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those in the top are at least willing to sit at the table with us and listen.
Yeah, Randy, and I agree with Tom. From our standpoint, you want a partnership, right? So if they're a true partner, the communication goes both ways, right? And they're willing to work with you on different accounts and help you through things where you need help. And then again, the relationship that you build and that helps you go forward. If you're having trouble with a claim, you have somebody to communicate with. No different than you guys running your mutual. If something isn't going perfect, at least you're willing to listen, and that's definitely a big thing. And to where we can again talk about communication, where we can work through the issue and come to an agreement. Neither one of us may be happy, but we have a way to get to the middle and to resolve that. So I think in our agency, the companies that do those things for us tend to rise to the top, if that's a good way to say it.
And also, make no mistake about it, when companies make decisions that affect agents, for example, lowering of commissions, right? They don't bring agents to the table and discuss that and say, hey, we're considering lowering commissions. What do you think? And they know the answer and what we think. So we hear about it once the decision has been made in their boardroom or whatever room, and they tell us on January 1st of 2022, rates are going to go from 15% to 10%, and that's the way it is. And then I get calls from members saying they can't do that. That's not fair. And I say, yes, they can. That's the way it's set up. You don't have to do business with them if you don't want to. We as an association can't recommend that, certainly. But if individual agencies don't like certain things the companies are doing, It's a two-way street. Companies can choose who they appoint and contract with, and agents can as well. So a little bit of disconnect there, because again, we're not at the table when they're making decisions that affect livelihoods of agents. Those are company decisions. Those are business decisions. Those are things that are done before we hear about them. So good or bad.
And one of the agents that I spoke with, or when I sent out information, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. I think we have companies that really want those relationships and work really hard for those relationships. And then I think we have companies that work off their numbers or work off their programs, and the relationships aren't as important. And I think going forward, those relationship companies will work really hard to build those relationships back after COVID is done. And I think the companies that don't like that relationship as much or work at it as hard will continue doing what they're doing, and will probably use technology more and go forward. So I think those relationship companies will work, and I think your membership, I think the mutuals work really hard at having a relationship with their agents and doing those things.
I agree. Hopefully that kind of answered your question, Randy.
It's a great answer. I focus on the fact that you said, because it's a business partnership and relationship. And then just sometimes it isn't so complicated. It's just being willing to listen and be open-minded. So no, those are great answers. Thank you very much, Steve and Tom.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions they want to pose to Tom or Steve?
You can even ask questions about my previous life if you want. I dealt with a lot of you when I was at the division. Enjoyed working with you guys tremendously. So,
I guess I'll pose a question. When we talk about the communication and I know a lot of us, we make the underwriting decisions, and unfortunately a lot of them are changed or adapted based on claims, and we learn more and we get better at what we do. And when we distribute that, being the mutuals out to the agents, we try and just do it as a uniform distribution out to them all. So they're all getting it at the same time, they're getting the same information, whether that's through an email or a direct mail or both. But yet, do you recommend that communication, like maybe a on-site visit once a month, once a quarter? I mean, what would you guys recommend to the mutual managers in those types of situations?
You want me to take this one, Tom?
I'll listen.
I think every agency would answer that differently, Brian. Again, it goes back to the way your agency wants communication from their companies. Just like the companies are different, I think every agency is different. I think you probably have agencies that don't want to ever see you, and you have agencies that want a phone call or communication every week. My customers are no different. I have customers that all have different expectations. I think your managers have to work with their agency base, and I even ask my customers, when I'm meeting with them, what are your expectations? Are we meeting your expectations? And do we need to do something different? So I think if your managers will communicate with the agencies, we represent a couple different mutuals, and we get good communication from our mutuals, and we see people probably once a quarter. And in some cases, we do enough that before COVID, we were probably in their office, maybe once a month. So I think it's just an individual choice, but I think that's a good question.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know for a fact we have agents who literally could care less if they ever communicate on a regular basis with companies unless they're needed. So as needed, if you will. So they want them readily available to be able to help them when the situation arises, but yet they don't want to have somebody walking through the doors every other week with, just to visit. Because, we all know what just visiting means. It's challenging sometimes when you're busy, you have something going, you have somebody who stops in your office across the desk, and you don't want to be rude, yet you have work to do. And so it's an everyday challenge.
And I think that even goes to the association side, Brian and Tom, how we're meeting our members' goals. And I think we have some of the same problems during COVID is how do we engage our members? How do we get them to stay involved? We have an annual planning that we do in May that's normally held in person, and we have committees and they help guide where we want our association to go. And now all of that is Zoom, and we're having a hard time sometimes getting our members engaged to be part of that process on a Zoom call. Because they don't maybe think like they're being heard or they're doing anything that's going to help, where in person they think they get that message. So I don't know if you guys are having similar issues with that or not, but it's a challenge from the association side.
Absolutely. People literally mark it on their calendar every year to come to Des Moines for annual planning. We met at a hotel. We met all day. We fed everybody lunch. And again, back to that education part of it, people got to mingle with others, and they really look forward to it. And we had to do it differently last year, and attendance or participation dropped a lot. And this year we're really struggling because, again, believe it or not, people want to get in their car, and if they're from out of the metro area, they like coming and visiting with peers. And it's no different between agents and companies, or us and companies, or it's just don't know where it's going. Mr. Polish, I don't want to call you out, but I would be hard to believe you wouldn't have a question.
I'm just waiting my turn here, Randy, or Tom. Didn't want to butt in.
No, how you doing, Jim?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Hey, I did, since you brought up the subject, I do have a couple of questions I'd like to pose the association. We had a pretty good windstorm go through Iowa. I don't know if you heard about it or not. And I'm just curious if the association was going to put together some type of, poll their members for some type of report card to kind of let us, give us some feedback as far as how we did as an industry, and maybe identify some of our strengths and weaknesses that maybe we could incorporate going forward.
There's real no report card plan, Jim. I will say that I had constant communications with the insurance division during that. The last report, they had received less than 100 complaints at the division from the derecho, which is remarkable. Because any event or storm causes issues. So that in itself, I think, tells a lot about how companies and agents responded. 100 may seem like a lot, but compared to the thousands of claims, it was really a small number. And many of those complaints didn't involve the agent or the company or the adjuster. It was regarding the public adjusters who swarmed in to help out, if you will. Because as you know, public adjusters, they often show up right when the storm hits, and they're not to be found after, because very few of them are licensed from Iowa. Most of them come from other states. So that was a lot of the complaints, was public adjusters. So overall, Jim, I think things went well. I think the companies, and there's always complaints on claims, right? I mean, you just can't win. I actually had a complaint from somebody, a phone call, and he said that he turned a claim in, and he was actually local here in Clive, Iowa. He turned a claim in, and he got contacted by his company that said, hey, the claim was just for, because he had shingles missing from his roof, didn't know how many, so he wanted an adjuster to come out. He found several in the yard. So the company advised him that they're really busy and won't be able to make it out, but just to get an estimate and send it in, they'd review it. So he called a contractor, and it was really hard to find somebody, but while he wasn't home one day, contractor comes out, inspected his roof, and put an estimate in his front door. And the estimate, of course, was to replace the entire roof, both slopes. He turns that into the company as requested, and without even hearing anything else from the company, nothing. He gets a check in the mail for the entire roof. And he says, what do I do? He goes, my whole roof isn't damaged. I don't need a new roof, but they sent me a check without even looking at it. And he goes, maybe it wasn't clear to the contractor. I just wanted an estimate for the damages. This is what they gave me. So I turned it in, get a check. So things like that, you know, it's troubling to hear. And I don't even know what company it was. It was not a local company, I know. But things like that are troubling to hear. We usually hear the opposite, not getting paid enough. I just thought that was a unique situation and call, complete opposite of what it usually gets. So,
Well, Tom, the reason I bring that up is that I've heard several stories where a lot of people are very pleased with independent insurance agents that they had. And of course, and the companies they represent, which is a lot of the mutuals, as you know, compared to a lot of the direct companies. And all it is just hearsay, but I would really love to have something to grasp on and say, yeah, we do a lot better than the out of state or the corporate direct agents.
mm-hmm. No, I agree with that, Jim. I think it would be good information to have. Quite challenging to obtain. We need to have claim records from everybody and who all reported claims. And so I don't have anything planned right now. It's certainly something, Steve, that you can direct me to do as the board president. And I've been known to listen to you occasionally. So, you know, be happy to look at trying to do some sort of consumer survey. It doesn't surprise me at all, Jim, at one bit. I have all the respect in the world for what independent agents do. I think they really care. I'm not saying that the captives don't, not my point, but I think the agents that we represent throughout the state of Iowa, I think they care about their consumers. I wrote in a recent Viewpoint magazine article that how impressive it was that many of our agents had damages of their own and had problems at their own house and no power and no phones, and were still put their own damages aside and help their customers first. And I saw that over and over again, which I think is a true credit to our agents and you all. I mean, you're our agents as well.
Yeah, and there's no doubt, you know, our membership and your agents care about their people and go through the things that they have to go through, good or bad, to make sure their clients get taken care of in the best way possible. Jim, I've known you for a long time, all the way back to helping the fire departments with an unnamed company. But you know, I think our membership does a wonderful job. I think we can get a survey, you know, from our own companies, but I'm not sure that's going to compare that to the other side of that. It would be maybe a comparison of all the companies that our independent agents represent.
I certainly understand the logistical issues in putting any type of information like that together, but you know, I'm hoping that this last year was a once in a lifetime event. I really hope it was. So you just as well try to get some good out of it. And like I said, I think a lot of people went over and above what was expected of them. I do think the Iowa insurers, the people that were insured here in Iowa, benefited greatly from, again, the independent agents and, again, the companies they represent. I think we did a great job. Certainly, I look at other areas, et cetera, that did not perform as well. In Cedar Rapids, our adjusters, agents, et cetera, were on the ground running long before the FEMA or anyone else ever came to town.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Steve and Tom, NAMIC, the National Association, it wouldn't be just Iowa in there, but it is inclusive of all mutuals under the NAMIC Association.
Mhm.
They have a study, it's called the Mutual Report, and it does show they've done studies that might cut to the chase or give you some guidance if you're going to do your own study. But it shows the difference between mutuals and stock companies, and then also the favorability. And from my experience and being involved in the state and as we are, that report held true through the August 10th storm as well, that companies stepped up and performed well. I always say local company and people taking care of local companies and people is a good scenario.
Is that a one-time study they did, Randy, or do you know? I mean, I can contact NAMIC and ask for it.
Yep. No, they've done it the last couple of years.
Okay.
2000, I think maybe 18 might have been the first, but there's one out there for 19 and 20 as well. And it's simply called the Mutual Report. And yep, I'm sure they'd be happy to share that with you.
Sure. Okay.
yeah, and Tom, our National Association does reports compared to direct writers on percentages of volume and different market shares, but I don't think I've ever seen one with a claims study. And Randy, I would agree with you that our mutuals did a really, really nice job through the August 10th storm. And I see Kendall up there. He's close enough to Marshalltown to understand, we've had a tornado, a hailstorm, and a derecho in the last 3 years. And so Randy, we hope that it's a once in a lifetime thing. We've said that for 3 years in a row. So I'm hoping that the 3 years is done and we go for a better experience for 2021.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Steve or Tom at this point? I'm not seeing any or hearing any. So I would like to thank both Tom and Steve for taking time out of their busy schedules to provide the membership of our group some constant knowledge and hopefully some good things that we take away from this and continue to down the road as well. Certainly keep in mind next month we are taking on a new task for the discussion sessions. We'll actually be taking on the investment management portion of what we do in our mutuals. We have several investment management groups that do sponsor MIAI. So starting next Wednesday, the 3rd, DM Kelly will be presenting to us for an MI discussion session on their views of investment management for the mutuals. And then following up on the 17th will be Union Bank and Trust and PMA. And then on the 24th will be the Henson Webb Group. So look for that invites coming out in the next week and weeks ahead. And
Brian, quick question for you.
Yes, Tom.
It was my understanding from working with Jenny all these years that the mutual association, I know with her, put her up in Hawaii every winter. Is that your
Well, I that was not worked into my contract, Tom. I appreciate you asking. I really do. Somehow the board felt maybe that wasn't appropriate at this point in time. I don't know.
Okay.
I thank you for looking out for my better interest, though. Glad to have you on my team. That's for
You
sure.
got it, buddy.
Yeah, and that's where Tom spends his time. The background is just like the palm trees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, thank you again, gentlemen, and thank everybody for attending today. Keep in mind, if you were not able to catch all the session, we do have it recorded. It is out on our YouTube channel, so you can catch this one and all the other ones that we've had out there as well. So
Thank you, everyone.
again. Have a good
Thanks,
afternoon.
everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.